Then Lucas lived in a silence that wasn't just of the ears, but of the soul. A heavy veil covering his days since the accident that stole the movement from his legs and, with it, the natural buzz of a full childhood. The mansion, once a haven of laughter, had become a gilded fortress, an empty echo of a past he could barely reach. At 12, his most ardent wish wasn't for new toys or exotic trips, but for the simple, forgotten feeling of grass underfoot, of warm asphalt on a carefree run. The wheelchair, a sophisticated model with ergonomic adjustments and a futuristic design, was both an instrument of mobility and a symbol of his prison, a constant reminder of his failure to be normal. His father, Dr. Arthur, a pharmaceutical industry magnate, devoted himself with an almost feverish passion to his son's recovery. But his love of control and exact science blinded him to Lucas's deeper needs. Arthur saw his son through medical reports and cutting-edge therapies, without realizing that Lucas's greatest wound was a distrust of any kindness not wrapped in protocols or promises of miraculous cures. He had learned to accept silence as his fate, a bitter pride that isolated him further. In the vast gardens surrounding the mansion, on the outskirts of Ouro Preto, Minas Gerais, Lucas spent hours observing the world beyond the walls. The afternoon breeze, laden with the unmistakable scent of wet earth and the sweetness of wildflowers, was a constant reminder of what he couldn't touch. He kept a small, smooth, cold river stone in his pocket, which his fingers repeatedly caressed, almost a mantra. That stone was his only tangible connection to the wild nature around him, a piece of the free world he fantasized about on his long afternoons. It was a secret, a refuge, a piece of the river no one else knew. From his bedroom window, Lucas saw the small makeshift camp at the edge of the woods, where a man with graying hair and a sparse beard, known only as Jonas, seemed to have taken root. Jonas wasn't like the others. He didn't beg, he didn't make noise, he just observed. His eyes, an almost transparent blue, seemed to carry stories of a distant time, of a world Lucas only knew from books. To the boy, Jonas was an enigma, a silent figure that contrasted with the sterile opulence of his own life. Jonas spent his days gathering herbs, watching birds, living in harmony with nature. Lucas, from the window, felt a strange attraction to that simplicity, a stark contrast to the complexity of the mansion and medical treatments. Why would a man choose to live like that, so close to the earth, so far from everything? This question hammered in Lucas's head, a curiosity that pulled him a little out of his own silence. One day, as Lucas was at his usual observation point, Jonas saw him. Not just saw him, but waved. A simple wave, without pretense, without pity. Lucas had never received such a pure gesture. His father, Dr. Arthur, viewed Jonas's presence with disdain, almost as a stain on the perfect landscape of his property. He had instructed the security guards to keep the man away, but Jonas was like the breeze, always finding a way back. Have you ever stopped to think about how a simple gesture can change everything? Or how curiosity about something so small can open doors to a new universe? Where are you joining us from? Leave your name and city in the comments. Let's create a chain of stories. Lucas felt there was something different about Jonas, something beyond his appearance or his condition. It was a kind of wisdom, perhaps. He watched Jonas mix herbs, light small fires, always with a purpose. What was that man doing there, so alone, so connected to the natural world? Lucas, who could barely touch the grass, saw in Jonas the freedom he lacked. Jonas's presence was an annoyance to Dr. Arthur, a reminder of a disorganized world, out of his control. For Arthur, everything needed a method, scientific proof. Lucas's life, in his mind, was a problem to be solved with the highest technology and the best specialists, not with the observation of a homeless man. This divergence of views was an abyss between father and son, an abyss that only grew. Lucas, with his smooth stone in his pocket, felt that the truth about the world was much more complex than his father's medical reports could describe. And what Dr. Arthur didn't yet know was that the answer to Lucas's silence, to his soul, might not be in formulas, but in the simplicity of a man at the edge of the woods. Lucas, driven by a nagging curiosity, began to orchestrate small detours in his monitored routine. Instead of following the paved path of the gardens, he asked the nurse, a new and less attentive young man, to take him on trails closer to the fence that divided the property from the woods. He wanted to see Jonas up close, to understand that silent universe. With each walk, His eyes searched for the camp, and each time Jonas was there like an anchor in the shifting landscape. Dr. Arthur, in turn, intensified his orders to the security guards. Daily reports about the intruder reached his desk, always with the same conclusion. The man posed no threat, but his presence was undesirable. Arthur saw in Jonas's figure an affront to the perfection he sought for his son, a sign that not everything could be controlled, not even the landscape around his fortress. He didn't understand Lucas's attraction to what he considered chaos. One day Lucas was closer than ever. The nurse, distracted by his cell phone, left him for a few minutes under the shade of a leafy mango tree, almost at the boundary. Lucas felt the scent of the woods stronger, the damp earth life pulsating. And there was Jonas sitting on a tree stump, watching the slow-flowing stream. He looked like a guardian of ancient secrets. Lucas, his heart beating faster, took the river stone from his pocket. He caressed it, an unconscious gesture of someone seeking comfort. Jonas raised his blue eyes, and for the first time their gazes met without the barrier of distance. There was no surprise on the man's face, just a gentle recognition. "Your stone is beautiful," Jonas said, his voice hoarse but surprisingly calm. Lucas was startled. No one knew about the stone. It was his most intimate treasure. How did he know? The boy felt a shiver, a mixture of fear and fascination. "It comes from the river," Lucas whispered, his voice almost inaudible, surprised at himself for answering. It was the first time he had spoken to Jonas. "I know," Jonas replied with a slight smile. "They hold the memory of the water, of the force that moves everything." He paused, his eyes fixed on the stone in Lucas's hand. "But the greatest strength, boy, is within you." Lucas felt a shock. His father spoke of physical strength, rehabilitation, muscles to be reactivated. Jonas spoke of a different kind of strength, one Lucas barely understood. This short, unexpected conversation planted a seed. Could it be that healing wasn't just in machines and medicines? That stone, so simple yet so full of meaning for Lucas, was the first link, an object proof of a connection that defied Dr. Arthur's logic. It was a symbol of Lucas's search for something beyond the tangible, a crack in the wall of his distrust. The nurse returned, hurried, and Lucas had to leave. But Jonas's words echoed in his mind. The seed of curiosity had germinated in fertile soil. In the following days, Lucas began to seek Jonas's presence even more eagerly, taking advantage of every gap in surveillance. He felt that Jonas understood him in a way no one else did, not even his father. There was an intimacy that both scared and attracted him. Jonas, in turn, seemed to wait for Lucas. On one of those afternoons, as the sun was already setting, Jonas approached the fence. He carried a metal mug and a small clay flask. "Boy, I have something for you," he said, extending the mug. Inside it, a greenish liquid with a sweet and earthy smell. "Drink this juice. It comes from the earth and the sun, and it will help you find the strength you already have." Lucas froze. The juice, that juice that, according to the premise, would make him walk again. But the boy's mind, trained by his father to distrust anything not validated by science, immediately thought the worst. Poison. It was the first word that came to his mind. His father always warned him about strangers, about unknown substances. He imagined chemical reactions, hidden dangers. Was it a trap? Lucas's heart pounded, an erratic drum. He looked at the mug, then at Jonas's calm eyes. There was no malice, just a deep, almost ancestral kindness. But Dr. Arthur's voice, with his warnings about charlatans and miraculous cures, resonated in his ears. Was that juice the promise of a miracle, or the door to an unknown danger? What would a boy do, divided between naive faith and the implacable reason of the adult world? It's amazing how certain stories make us question our own truths, isn't it? We ask ourselves, what would I do in Lucas's place? Or is true justice always where we expect it? If you also believe that the truth needs to be revealed, and that we need to unite to understand these life plots, comment "Juice and Truth" below. Your comment helps strengthen our community and show that you are part of this search for transformative stories. Lucas looked at the mug. The green liquid seemed to pulse almost as if it had a life of its own. The afternoon breeze, which before carried the sweet scent of the woods, now seemed to carry whispers of doubt and hope. The stone in his pocket, which was a symbol of his connection to nature, was now also a reminder of the abyss between his father's world and Jonas's world. Would this be Lucas's chance to test himself, to go beyond what had been imposed on him? He needed to decide right then whether healing would come from science or from something science couldn't yet explain. Lucas took a deep breath, the smell of wet earth mixing with the sweetness of the liquid in the mug. His father's voice, with all its weight and authority, screamed in his mind, warning him of the danger of the unknown. But Jonas's eyes, those blue eyes that seemed to see through his soul, conveyed a peace that no machine or medical report had ever offered. It was a choice between cold certainty and wild hope. The boy with the smooth stone in his pocket felt a warmth rising in his chest, a silent decision forming. He brought the mug to his lips. The juice was earthy, slightly sweet, with a taste that reminded him of the forest after rain. He drank it all, feeling his throat burn gently. Jonas smiled, a genuine smile Lucas had never seen in his father. The strength is already within you, boy. Now let it awaken. That night Lucas slept a deep sleep unlike any other. There were no dreams of running or grass underfoot, just a restorative quietness. But at dawn, a strange tingling sensation ran through his legs. First a slight tremor in his toes, then a feeling of warmth rising through his calves. He tried to move a muscle, something he hadn't done in years. And to his astonishment, the muscle responded. Weak, hesitant, but it responded. Lucas's heart pounded. He sat up in bed, eyes wide. He tried again with more force. His knees bent slightly. A tear rolled down his face, hot and salty. He wasn't dreaming. He could move his legs. The miracle had happened. The joy was so great it hurt. Lucas wanted to shout, he wanted to run, he wanted to tell the world. But his mind, still under his father's shadow, held him back. How to explain? How would his father, the scientist, react to something so inexplicable? He tried to stand, leaning on the bed. His legs trembled, but the floor was there beneath his feet. He took a step. Then another. His body, once a prison, was now a vehicle of freedom. He walked across the room, tottering but determined. Each step was a victory, a challenge to the silence that had imprisoned him. Was the truth about life really vaster than science could measure? He needed to know. The news, like a wildfire in dry woods, quickly spread through the mansion. One of the nurses, upon entering Lucas's room and finding him standing, leaning against the window, let out a cry of surprise that echoed through the corridors. Dr. Arthur was immediately informed. His always controlled demeanor dissolved into a mixture of shock and fury. He rushed to his son's room, expecting to find some mistake, some illusion. But there Lucas stood, eyes shining with a life Arthur hadn't seen in years. "Lucas, what—" "How is this possible?" he stammered, his voice choked. The boy, with the courage his new freedom gave him, tried to explain about Jonas, about the juice, about the strength the man said existed within him. But Arthur didn't listen. His scientific mind was in turmoil. A miracle? A cure without protocols, without exams, without his permission? It was a personal attack on his expertise, on his dedication. "This is absurd. Some charlatan gave you something. I don't believe in magic, Lucas, and neither should you." The mansion turned into chaos. Doctors were called urgently. Exams were scheduled. But the results were unanimous. Lucas was recovering at a speed that defied any prognosis. His muscles, once atrophied, were responding. Science had no answers, and this left Dr. Arthur in a panic. He couldn't accept that something out of his control, something mystical, had cured his son. What would society say? What would his colleagues say? His reputation, his image as a renowned scientist, was at stake. Determined to expose what he considered a dangerous farce, Dr. Arthur ordered the security camera footage to be meticulously reviewed. He wanted proof of what had happened. He wanted to understand the mechanism behind that sudden recovery. And it was there in the grainy images of the surveillance system that he found the missing piece, the irrefutable proof of his charlatanism theory. In the recordings from the previous afternoon, Lucas appeared at the property line and Jonas, the homeless man, handed him a mug. The images showed the boy taking the mug and then drinking the greenish liquid. That video, once just a routine record, became the second piece of evidence, cold and irrefutable for Arthur. The juice. The homeless man. The connection was clear in his mind. It was him, wasn't it? "That man gave you something to drink," Arthur roared, showing the images to Lucas. "This isn't healing, Lucas. It's irresponsible." "He could have poisoned you." "He could have killed you." The boy, who had felt free, now felt the weight of his father's accusation. The joy of healing mixed with the fear of having disappointed the man, who in his own way loved him so much. Lucas tried to defend Jonas, to explain the kindness in his eyes, the wisdom in his words. But Arthur was blinded by anger and fear. To him, Jonas was a threat, an intruder who had corrupted his son with empty promises and unknown substances. He had seen cases like this before, desperate people falling into the hands of opportunists. His image as a protective father and rational scientist was on the line, and he wouldn't allow it. The pressure mounted, not only on Jonas but on Lucas, who found himself in the midst of a battle between reason and faith, between his father's world and the world Jonas had shown him. Would Lucas be able to prove Jonas's innocence and the truth of his healing? Or would his father succeed in destroying the only bridge connecting him to a hope that didn't come in bottles? Dr. Arthur's fury was a whirlwind sweeping through the mansion. He could not allow his family's reputation, his scientific legacy, to be stained by a miracle from an unknown man at the edge of the woods. To him, Jonas was a criminal, a charlatan exploiting others' fragility. Arthur wasted no time. With the security camera footage in hand, he contacted local police, reporting Jonas for charlatanism and alleged administration of unknown substances to a minor. The accusation was serious, and Lucas's father was determined to see justice. His justice prevail. The police, accustomed to minor incidents in tranquil Ouro Preto, were surprised by the gravity of the complaint from such an influential name. They went to Jonas's camp, who offered no resistance. He was there, sitting on his tree stump, with the same calm as always, watching the stream. When asked about the juice and Lucas's healing, Jonas merely smiled, an enigmatic smile. "The truth, my dears, is older than your science, and simpler too," he said, without raising his voice. The police took him to the station for questioning, and the news quickly spread through the area, fueling gossip and speculation. Lucas, now steadier on his legs each day, felt like a traitor. His father had forbidden him from mentioning Jonas, from even thinking about it. But how could he not think? With every step he took, every time he felt the ground beneath his feet, the image of Jonas and the earthy taste of the juice returned. He knew with a certainty beyond reason that Jonas was not a charlatan. But how to prove it? How to convince his father? The boy who once felt powerless now felt the urgency to act, to find the truth behind the man who had given him back his life. He knew the juice wasn't poison, but what was it then? While Arthur mobilized his lawyers to ensure Jonas was prosecuted, Lucas began his own silent investigation. He used his father's tablet, searching for old news from the region. That's how, on an old online forum for local residents, he found an ancient comment more than 10 years old that mentioned a wandering healer who had helped people with health problems long ago before disappearing. The comment was vague, but the name Jonas appeared associated with stories of inexplicable cures and a deep connection to the herbs of the mountains. It was a tenuous clue, but it sparked a light in Lucas's mind. A digital record, almost forgotten, that challenged his father's narrative of charlatanism. This forum comment, a simple post almost lost in time, became the third piece of evidence. It wasn't formal proof, but for Lucas it was a window into Jonas's past, a suggestion that there was more to the story than his father could see. The boy felt a pang of hope. He wasn't just a homeless man. He wasn't just a charlatan. But what was he, after all? And why couldn't his father see it? Arthur's distrust was a wall, and Lucas was determined to find a door. Arthur, in turn, was in contact with the hospital where Lucas had been treated after the accident. He demanded detailed copies of all exams, all medical reports, seeking any anomaly, any diagnostic error that could scientifically explain his son's miraculous recovery. He wanted to prove that Lucas's improvement was a medical phenomenon, even if rare, and not the result of a healer's intervention. But the reports reviewed by an independent team confirmed the initial prognosis. Lucas had very little chance of full recovery, and the speed of his improvement was, in fact, extraordinary. There were no errors in the diagnoses. What was there then? The lack of a scientific explanation for Lucas's recovery, despite all of Arthur's efforts, was the big missing piece in the magnate's puzzle. He was caught between the irrefutable evidence of his son's improvement and the impossibility of accepting the cause Lucas pointed to. The tension in the mansion was palpable. Lucas, with his new mobility, felt stronger, but also more isolated. He knew the truth was there somewhere, but it seemed no one else wanted to see it. Was Dr. Arthur's implacable logic incapable of seeing what was right in front of him? And what would Lucas do with this responsibility of having been cured by a man now accused of charlatanism? Have you ever felt like this, caught between a rock and a hard place when the truth seems so obvious to you but incomprehensible to others? This is the time to ask yourself, what would I do in Lucas's shoes? Or how can we help unravel these layers of life? If this story touches on something you've experienced, subscribe now and comment what you would do in my place. Your support drives these stories. Lucas continued to scour the corners of the internet, the city's digital archives. He found mentions of an old research project on medicinal plants in the region, coordinated by a renowned botanist who had mysteriously disappeared years ago. Right around the same time the wandering healer had been mentioned, an old low-resolution photo showed this botanist. His eyes, even with the poor image quality, had a familiar glimmer, an almost transparent blue. That photo, a record of a past and forgotten life, began to connect dots that previously seemed disconnected. Could it be that Jonas was more than just a homeless man? The idea seemed crazy, but with each passing day, with each step Lucas took, he felt he was closer to a truth his father refused to see. Lucas, heart pounding, zoomed in on the image on the tablet. There was no denying it. The eyes, the shape of the face, the posture. The man in the photo, the renowned botanist Dr. Jonas Alencar, was the same Jonas who lived at the edge of the woods. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Jonas wasn't just any homeless man. He was a scientist, a student of nature, someone who, for some reason, had abandoned academic life and secluded himself there. That revelation was a shock, but also a wave of relief. The juice, the cure, the wisdom about herbs, it all made sense now. It wasn't charlatanism. It was science of a different, perhaps deeper, more connected kind. Lucas delved deeper. He found scientific articles published by Dr. Jonas Alencar, research on local flora, on medicinal properties of plants that his father, in his obsession with laboratories and chemical syntheses, would never consider. There was a specific project detailing the composition of a revitalizing elixir based on Atlantic forest herbs, with regenerative properties for the nervous system. The article mentioned a key ingredient, a rare reddish root that grew only in specific volcanic soils of the region. Jonas's juice. That was the proof. Not a poison, but a formula studied, researched, developed by a scientist. But why had Dr. Alencar disappeared? Why did he live as a hermit? Lucas found an old newspaper clipping, small, almost hidden, that spoke of a scandal. Dr. Alencar had had a serious disagreement with the scientific community of the time. His research, considered too alternative and lacking the rigor of conventional pharmaceutical tests, was ridiculed and discredited. He was accused of mixing science with folklore, of not following established protocols. The pressure was so great that he simply vanished, abandoned everything. That was the reason for his refuge, the explanation for his isolated life. It was a story of disillusionment, of a man who chose nature over academia. The weight of injustice squeezed Lucas's chest. His father was repeating the same mistake, condemning Jonas for what he didn't understand. The discovery of Jonas's true identity, Dr. Alencar, and the context of his disappearance was the turning point Lucas needed. It was the piece that fit everything together. The photo, the articles, the newspaper clipping, everything aligned to expose the charlatanism accusation. How would his father react to this? Lucas knew it was no use just confronting his father with the evidence. Arthur was blinded by pride and anger. He needed an authority, someone who could validate Jonas's story and give it the weight it deserved. He thought about who could help. The police hadn't believed Jonas. His father's lawyers only wanted to incriminate the man. But what if there was someone from outside, someone impartial with the power to give voice to the truth? He remembered a report he had read about an investigative journalist, Anna Paula, famous for unraveling cases of injustice and for giving a voice to the marginalized. She worked for a major news portal and had a history of confronting powerful people. Lucas felt a glimmer of hope. He needed to reach her. With hands still trembling with emotion, Lucas searched for the journalist's contact. He found a public email and carefully drafted a message. He explained the situation, the accident, the inexplicable cure, Jonas's arrest and what he had discovered about Dr. Jonas Alencar, the discredited botanist. He attached links to the scientific articles, the newspaper clipping, and a screenshot of the old photo. He knew he was risking his father's wrath, but he could no longer remain silent. Jonas's justice and the truth about his own healing were worth any risk. That was his point of no return. He had crossed the line not to Jonas's side, but to the side of truth. The journalist's response came faster than he expected. Anna Paula, intrigued by the story and the seriousness of the information, arranged a secret meeting with Lucas. She was known for her discretion and her knack for stories that oppressed the innocent. That afternoon, while his father was in an important meeting in the capital, Lucas, with the help of a trusted household employee who sympathized with him, managed to leave the mansion and meet Anna Paula at a discreet cafe in the city. He detailed everything, showing the documents on the tablet, the river stone he kept in his pocket, and describing the feeling of freedom that Jonas's juice had given him. Anna Paula listened attentively, her keen eyes analyzing every word, every detail. The story had all the elements of a major report. The son of a magnate cured by a homeless man who was in fact a renegade scientist, unjustly accused. The journalist saw not only a news story, but an opportunity to expose the arrogance of formal science and social injustice. This story had the power to question many truths. She committed to investigating thoroughly, to giving Jonas a voice, to exposing Dr. Arthur's farce. That meeting, the journalist's secrecy and the credibility she brought, was the restorative force Lucas so desperately sought. The turnaround was complete. The truth once whispered in the shadows now had a powerful voice to be heard by all. What would happen now? Would Dr. Arthur, with all his power and influence, be able to contain the avalanche that was coming? The journalist Anna Paula wasted no time. Her meticulous and impactful report was published on the portal, revealing the true identity of Jonas Alencar, the renowned renegade botanist, and the story behind Lucas's miraculous cure. She presented Jonas's scientific articles, the context of his discredit by the academic community, and contrasted it with Dr. Arthur's arrogance and his attempt to incriminate an innocent man. The repercussions were immediate and overwhelming. The security camera video, once Arthur's proof of Jonas's charlatanism, was now proof of Lucas's faith and courage, of the simplicity of an act of kindness against the complexity of distrust. The old forum comment, the faded photo of Dr. Alencar, all the objects Lucas had discovered gained new meaning, turning against the magnate's initial narrative. Dr. Arthur was caught off guard by the avalanche of criticism. His image as an impeccable scientist and devoted father crumbled in a matter of hours. Social media, newspapers, television, everyone was talking about the story. The scientific community, once so closed off, began to question its own practices, the rigidity of its protocols. Arthur tried to defend himself, but the evidence was irrefutable. Jonas's truth, which he had tried so hard to suppress, emerged with uncontrollable force. Jonas was released from the police station. There were no more accusations. Justice, in a way Arthur would never have expected, had been served. Lucas, now walking with more confidence each day, went to meet Jonas, holding the river stone in his hand. He no longer needed it as a refuge, but as a reminder of the courage that propelled him to seek the truth. The stone, once a secret, was now a symbol of his journey, of the bridge he built between two worlds. If this story resonated with you, if you also believe that truth, however hidden, always finds its way, subscribe to the channel now and comment what you would do in Lucas's place. Your support drives these stories and helps us continue seeking transformative truths. Dr. Arthur, confronted with reality and public repercussions, had to swallow his pride. He saw his son, once confined to a wheelchair, now standing full of life, and realized the depth of his error. It wasn't science that was wrong, but his own interpretation of it, his inflexibility. He apologized to Jonas, a difficult but necessary gesture. The reparation was not only legal but moral. Jonas Alencar's reputation was restored, and his research on medicinal plants gained the recognition it deserved. Dr. Arthur, in a move that surprised everyone, not only funded Jonas's research but also became a fervent advocate for integrative medicine. He learned that true science was not limited to laboratory walls, but extended to the ancestral wisdom of nature. His company, once focused solely on chemical syntheses, opened a new division dedicated to the study and development of herbal medicines, honoring Dr. Alencar's legacy. Rigidity gave way to curiosity, and excessive control to trust. The magnate, once so confined by his worldview, finally saw the richness that existed beyond protocols and formulas in test tubes. Jonas, now recognized, accepted the collaboration but did not abandon his connection to the wilderness. He did not return to formal academic life, preferring the freedom of his refuge where he continued his studies, now with resources and respect. His wisdom, once seen as charlatanism, became a beacon for many, proving that healing can come from where it's least expected, and that nature holds secrets that Western science is still just beginning to understand. He maintained his simplicity, his connection to the earth, but now his voice echoed with the imprimatur of undeniable truth. Lucas, in turn, not only walked again, but found his own voice. He became a link between his father and Jonas, a living testament that faith and science, when stripped of prejudice, can coexist in harmony. The river stone, once a secret comfort and a piece of the free world he couldn't reach, was now an amulet he carried, a constant reminder that the deepest truths often hide in simplicity, in what is natural and pure. He learned that the real poison was not in the juice, but in distrust, and that the most potent cure was openness to the new, to the different. And so the gilded mansion, which had once been an echo of silence, filled with a new hum, not of forced laughter, but of genuine dialogue between science and ancestral wisdom. The story of Lucas, Dr. Arthur, and Jonas Alencar shows us that truth has many faces, and that healing often arrives in a glass of earthy juice, offered by hands that society chose to ignore. Prejudice is a veil that blinds us to miracles all around us, waiting only for an open heart to be revealed. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel now. Leave your comment with the hashtag #JuiceMiracle and your like. Tell me where you're watching from, so I can recognize you in the next chapters. Thanks for staying until the end and supporting our channel.